When you're drawing, one of the important things, the most important thing, is to draw onto a piece of paper that's got the same ratio as your source image. So, for example, this image is A4 because that's the most convenient size that I can print out from my printer, and I want to actually reproduce that on this cheap pad of paper, and as you can see, it's bigger. So I don't want to draw it to the same size, which would be obviously the easiest thing to do. I want to make it as big as possible on this pad of cheap paper I've got. So you've got to make sure that the ratio is exactly the same, because if you don't, then there'll be a tendency, if you're drawing freehand, there'll be a tendency to actually try and use the whole piece of paper, and you'll probably end up drawing the face too wide or too long, or be distorted in some fashion. So I've marked up an area that's actually 1/3 bigger than an A4 piece of paper, and as you can see by that margin, it's the same ratio as the A4 piece of paper. I actually built this little gadget here, which allows me to very quickly and easily actually increase the size of an A4 piece of paper to A4 plus a third, A4 plus a half, A4 plus 2/3, up to A2. And A2 is an area that is 4 times an A4 sheet of paper. So this gadget allows me to very quickly, in this case, this surface is A4 plus a third. Being the cheapskate that I am, I bought this very small set of pencils because I want to do some drawing. It costs $3.95 or something. It's got 3 pencils, a HB, a B and a 2B, and you can see the relative kind of darkness given by those 3 pencils. It's got an eraser and it's got a pencil sharpener. So for $3.50, that's all I want to spend. I'm using very cheap paper, and let's see what I can do. Now, I don't pretend to be a great drawer. I'm a sketcher. I normally only sketch things I'm going to paint. So I can't give you any fancy tips on how to wield a pencil. I just, as I say, I sketch before I paint. And I typically sketch freehand because it's good practice for the brain. And I find making grids and most other methods extremely tedious, and I'm quite an impulsive person, so I prefer to draw freehand. Now, I invariably use an easel because an easel is there's no distortion creeping in when you use an easel, because the surface that you're painting on is parallel to your face. It's directly in front of your face as you're painting, and the whole idea is to avoid any distortions that are going to affect your painting. For example, look at this image when it's at an angle. If I was to, I mean, this is obviously an exaggeration, but if I was to try and draw that, inevitably my drawing is going to be totally distorted. So your source image should be at 90 degrees to your face, and your work surface needs to be 90 degrees to your face. And okay, so although this is on the table, I'm standing up, I'm trying to look down on it, and we'll see what happens. So you want your image to be adjacent to your work surface, at eye level, roughly with the various features roughly where they're going to be situated on the drawing. And you should analyze your image. So, and if you can mark on your image. So for example, where are those eyes situated in relation to this piece of paper? So minus the margins there, this is about 29 centimeters. So if we look at 14 and a half centimeters is the center of the paper. So the center line, I mean, I would have just guessed that anyway. The center line of the paper is approximately there. And width-wise, the center, that's about 20 centimeters. So the center point of that piece of paper is approximately there. You could reproduce that quite easily because the center point of any rectangle will be where the diagonals meet. So the center point is right there. That's about the only reference point I'm going to be using, because that center point tells me quite a lot about this picture. I know roughly where the nose is going to be, I know where the corner of the eye is, and it's approximately the same distance. I know where the side of the nose is in relation to it. Other things you should do when you're looking at the picture, you should understand and appreciate, especially with the portrait, what angle is the face at, because only rarely do you see a face straight on, and in fact a face that's looking at you straight on is often very boring. So this lady is looking at an angle over there, and she's possibly looking slightly down. Her eyes seem to be downcast. So I've got my center point and on the image, and I've got my center point on my piece of scrappy old paper, and let's start drawing. So as I said, I'm not a fantastic drawer. I can draw good enough to practice what I'm going to paint, essentially. So I've got these cheapo pencils, HB, B and 2B, and hopefully they're going to be enough of a range for what I want to do. They're color coded actually, so okay, let's start with the HB. So what I look for, and what you should look for, is shapes. Don't look at the face as a face, because if you do, your brain is going to start thinking about this person. Oh, she's got nice eyes, she's got luscious lips, she's very sad looking, she's got a greasy skin, there's all this emotional context that you really do not want. And often, it's better to look at the image upside down, because when it's upside down, you lose all that emotional context. You can't really see clearly the emotion on her face. You can more clearly see that these are just objects that you want to draw, and the relationships to other objects. And there's an object here and there's an object here, and there's a little triangle of objects here, and so you can much more clearly see the relationship. So later on we might actually turn it upside down and do that. Now if you can eliminate all that emotional context and look at it as a series of shapes, that is the center of this piece of paper. And straight away you can see how things are deceiving, because to me that looks to be far lower, even though that is the center, it looks to be far lower than that one over there. And so what's causing that? I think it's the fact that I'm still emotionally looking at this face, and the human mind spends all its time looking at all the features, and you tend to ignore that bit up the top there. So when I look at this blank piece of paper, I think, my God, there seems to be an incredible amount of space over there compared to over here. It's an optical illusion. That is the same point as that there. So let's look at shapes. Let's look at the negative shape. The negative shape here is this area under the chin. So if I can copy that onto my sheet, I'm halfway to doing the face. So there's that center point. I'm guessing, and guessing is perfectly fine. We work by making guesses. I'm going to guess that that negative shape starts here and it comes down like this, and then it wraps around here like this, and somewhere in the middle is that chin. Let's forget that it's a chin. Let's just look at that shape, and it comes round like that. So let me go to a B to make it a bit darker. So the question you have to ask yourself is this shape here, is this shape here the same as this shape over here? And you may decide it is or it isn't or whatever. Right, there's this little shape here, which I'll take the time to do as well. I probably won't do anything with that, but there's that little shape in there. Right, what other shapes have we got? Right, we know the center point that is there. We know the nose is, and I'm guessing again, the nose, the bottom of the nose is somewhere down here, and equidistant upwards is the corner of the eye. So say the eye is on that line there. Now this face is tilted ever so slightly. The eyes, there's the horizontal position on this piece of paper. The eyes are actually tilted a few degrees, and the whole face is tilted a few degrees. So what we might do is to actually incorporate that tilt, and what you can do is to make the image, align the image with the sheet, find out where that tilt is, move your arm along and say, right, the tilt is along that line there, and consequently the eyes are tilted along that sort of angle there, but not necessarily at that point. But that's about right as well. Let's have a look. The distance between there and there and between there and there is roughly there. Now, another thing to observe is that the corner of the eye in most people lines up with the edge of the nose, and depending on the width of the edge of the mouth is going to be somewhere on the iris if the iris is centered in the eye. So obviously if she's got a wider mouth, then it'll be further along. A smaller mouth, it'd be not quite as far. But human beings have got a certain range that the features can be. Typically, the distance between the eyes is the width of an eye. So that eye is about 5 centimeters. The width is about almost exactly 5 centimeters. So remember that. The distance between the eyes is very similar to the width of the eyes. Now she's got quite a broad nose. It seems to be quite broad. It's almost a triangle coming down from the center of the bridge of the nose. And because her face is slightly tilted, the corner of the eye doesn't marry up with the corner of the nose. The nose is extending beyond the eye because the nose is obviously sticking out from the face, and so it's not lining up anymore. So you need to observe all these little things. Normally, on someone with a symmetrical face, the angle of all the features are also parallel. So the eyes are along that line, the nose is along that line, and the mouth should be along that line. Some people's mouths are slightly tilted, and all these variations make us look different. So these are just general rules, but she is pretty much symmetrical. Okay, so now we've done some studying of the face, and we've decided that the nose is going to be a triangle, something like this over here. The eye is going to be along this line here, a little bit lower than that. So the eye is roughly there. Let's look at the corner. Let's look at the corner of the side of the nose in relation to that center point. And it's a little bit beyond there. So once again, I'm guessing the corner of the nose is going to be there. So the corner of the eye is going to be there. So let me look at the face, look at the shape of the eye. It's narrow. It's along that kind of angle. And above that is an eyelid. And above that, of course, is going to be somewhere there, is going to be, and quite low to the eye is going to be an eyebrow. So there's a width, an eye width between the eyes, so the other corner of the eye is going to be roughly there, and the eye is going to be something like that. Obviously, I'm guessing, and your guesses improve with experience. And the eyebrow is even closer to that eye than the eyebrow is to that eye, so it's hanging very low. It's going to be somewhere like that somewhere. So we've been looking at the relationship, all these various shapes. Another useful relationship is the relationship of the center of the nose to the corner of the eye. There's a triangle forming here that goes across the eyes from outer corner to outer corner down to the center of the nose. If you can reproduce the shape of that triangle, then that's another aid to getting it right. So I've got this line here. I need to have a similar line there, a line there, and I want to have a similar line there. So it's looking good. That triangle is looking to me to be quite good. I could be totally wrong, of course. So let's just that nostril there is much smaller looking than this shape over here. We have this round end to the nose, so the nose is looking a bit like that. There's a shadow along here, and the nose is going a bit like that. There's a bag under the eye. So look, we're picking up lots of information just by looking at the relationship to all these shapes. Now let's move down to the mouth. Now the mouth is obviously somewhere between there and there. In a lot of people, there's a smaller gap between the nose and the top of the mouth than there is between the bottom of the mouth and the chin. So the gap tends to be, remembering always there's a tilt on the face. I think the mouth is somewhere like this. And what I'm doing as I'm doing these lines, I'm looking at the relative position of what I'm doing with the rest of the face. So I'm thinking, where's the corner? Where's the corner in relation to that distance and that distance? And I've made it probably too high. That distance needs to be smaller than that distance. So the mouth probably needs to go lower than that. So the corner is roughly there. So I'm looking at all these various shapes. I'm looking at this shape here. This shape here, is that the same kind of shape? So you split the face, the features up into various shapes. The shape of the upper lip, the way the lip curls. All these are the distinctive features of the person that you're trying to draw. Look at the relative size of the lips. Look at the size of that lip and the size of this lip. The bottom lip is slightly just slightly fatter, and then the lip curls up towards the corner, and the bottom lip seems to end before the corner of the upper lip. So it's looking a bit like that. There's some shading there. Now this line it's a broad line because there's some shading there, so that actually goes in a little bit. There's some shading there. So we're getting an idea of the face. The pupils, the iris, sorry. It's central. The bottom is hidden under the lower lip. The top is hidden by the top lid. And similarly over here. And there's a highlight there. Now look at the shape of that forehead. That forehead, there's a triangle of light there. It's obviously tilted slightly because the eyebrows are tilted. And then there's this, and because this is the same ratio as the piece of paper, I know that the forehead is going to come something like this, and then there's some hair that comes down here like this, and it goes over there like that. Okay, so we're getting a feeling for this picture. Let's look at the shadows. There's a lot of shadow here. There's a dense amount of shadow here. Look at the shape here. This shape created by the tip of the nose, the end of the nose there, the side of the cheek, the eye, this shape here. Is that similar to that shape there? Possibly mine's a little bit too fat. Possibly. Look at the relationship of the mouth to the nose. Because of the tilt of the face, the mouth is actually ending closer to the where's my eraser? Is actually ending only just beyond the nose. So let me just do a bit more shading and I'll get back to you. Okay, using some very cheap paper. It's a slightly off-white paper, which is good because it's a bit of a mid-tone. Using some very basic freehand techniques of looking at shapes and the relationships to shapes. The only reference point we had was that one in the middle there. We ensured that the ratio of the piece of paper was the same ratio as the source image, and then we just looked at the relationship of all the shapes. And then just to show some of those highlights, just a dab of white acrylic. I just use a HB and 2B pencils. If I'd used a 4B or a 6B, I would have get much darker shadows and the thing would have looked a lot better. But for my purposes, for a test sketch of what I'll be painting, this has been great, because by doing this, you're analysing your subject, because okay, all faces have got two eyes, a nose and a mouth. It's the relative position of those features, the relative size, etc., that are going to make this person look pretty and that person look ordinary. So by doing this kind of work before you get down to painting, you're getting a much better idea of how to approach your painting, what things to look out for, where you can go wrong, and it's definitely very beneficial. Like I could have added a highlight along the top of the lip, but this paintbrush is a bit too wide, but that's good. I hope you got some benefit from this little exercise. Thank you.